Welcome everyone. On behalf of the San Clemente Chamber of Commerce, thank you for attending the 2020 Virtual Candidate Forum for the City of San Clemente Council election for the 2 four-year seats. My name is Jim Wynne, and I will be the co-moderator for this evening's forum. I serve as a member of the board of directors for the chamber and work in the area as a commercial real estate broker, providing real estate solutions for businesses and building owners in South Orange County.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Miska, and I'll be a co-moderator this evening with Jim. I am the executive director of First Amendment Voice, a co-sponsor for this event, and a nonpartisan San Clemente-based nonprofit that promotes civic engagement around the country. Audience members, you have 2 viewing options for this evening's webinar, gallery mode and speaker mode. You can toggle between the 2 modes in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Gallery allows you to see all of the candidates at once and is probably the default viewing mode for most people. Speaker mode displays the current speaker on a majority of your screen with the remaining candidates in small viewing boxes above that speaker. To ask questions, scroll to the bottom of your screen. And candidates, you can do this as well and open the Q&A function. Candidates, you will not be able to ask questions, but the audience will. They can submit their questions via the Q&A function. Feel free to read any of the open questions. If you like a question, click on the thumbs up icon. Audience voting is a big part of this experience, and the questions with the most votes will rise to the top of the question queue and be more likely to get asked. We're excited to give San Clemente residents the opportunity to learn about the people volunteering to serve our community. Thank you for coming out to join us this evening. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Steve. On behalf of the chamber, we thank First Amendment Voice for co-sponsoring our event and assisting with the technology necessary for our online forum. We especially thank the candidates for their willingness to serve the city in a leadership position that comes with so much responsibility and whose decisions as a city council member will affect our quality of life. I will go through the format of the forum now, and then we'll introduce each candidate. After the introductions, each candidate will provide 1-minute opening statement. Then each candidate will be asked 4 pre-composed questions determined by the forum committee, which they will each have 1 minute to answer. Following those questions, the candidates will answer at least 3 questions from you, the audience. If time allows, additional audience questions will be asked. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each of those questions. Lastly, each of the candidates will have 1 minute for their closing statements. Our session tonight is scheduled to end no later than 8 p.m. The forum is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube within 48 hours and can be viewed up until the election to help make informed decisions. Before you are 9 of the 10 candidates who are running for the 2 available seats for the 4-year term. Mr. Aaron Washington, please say hello to the audience.
Hi, good evening, San Clemente, and thanks for having me.
Aaron served 35 years in the United States Navy and has lived in San Clemente 14 years with his wife and son. He graduated from Capella University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration. He currently serves on the San Clemente Men's Golf Club Board of Directors and has participated as a motivational speaker for underprivileged children with the Boys Town of America Homeless Shelter. Mr. Bill Hart, please say hello to the audience.
Good evening, San Clemente, and good evening, fellow candidates. Glad to be here.
Bill is a 40-year resident and has been active in the community for 20+ years, including as chairman of the Coastal Advisory Committee, chairman of the General Plan Advisory Committee, and member of the Public Safety Task Force. He has held leadership roles in getting the beach trail built, prevented double tracking along the coast, and helped get the beach sand replenishment project off the ground. Bill graduated from the University of California, Santa Barbara with degrees in political science and economics and pursued graduate studies in urban economics. Mr. Thor Johnson, please say hello to the audience.
Good evening, San Clemente.
Thor was born and raised in Sunset Cliffs, San Diego, and studied business management and marketing at California State University, Dominguez Hills. Thor is co-founder of ETN Medical Center, an outpatient IV infection clinic in Fountain Valley. Thor is also founder and executive director for Together as One, a nonprofit organization benefiting children with autism. Mr. Chris Duncan, please say hello to the audience.
Hi, San Clemente.
Chris served for 16 years as a supervisory attorney in U.S. Customs and Border Protection, including a detail as Special Assistant United States Attorney, where he prosecuted drug smugglers and human traffickers. He lives in Talega with his wife, Haley, and their 3 kids. His 2 oldest attend Vista Del Mar Elementary, where he serves as an elected parent representative on the school site council and head of the Watchdogs, Dads of Great Students. He is a graduate of Boston College, University of Hawaii Manoa Law School, and Georgetown University Law Center. Mr. Patrick Minnehan, please say hello to the audience.
Hello, San Clemente.
Patrick served in the United States Air Force, trained and assigned as a member of a Titan II intercontinental ballistic missile launch crew. He spent 34 years in the healthcare industry in various leadership positions, most recently as the Chief Information Officer for Mason General Hospital. He is now licensed as an independent agent and is focused on insurance for the Medicare population. Community activities over the years include volunteering for Big Brothers Big Sisters and coaching and holding board and officer roles for youth football, baseball, and softball. Patrick is also a member of the Round Valley Indian tribes. Mr. Gene James, please say hello.
Good evening, San Clemente. I look forward to this evening and sharing my thoughts with you. Thank you.
Gene is completing his first term as a city council member. He spent a 20-year career with the United States Army Military Police Regiment, followed by a career with large corporations directing crime prevention, investigations, and security operations. Currently, in addition to his duties as city council member, he is an adjunct professor in criminal justice and an expert witness in causes of violent crime. He has served on nonprofit boards at the local, regional, and national levels. Mr. Jeff Wellman, please say hello to the audience.
Good evening, San Clemente.
Jeff is a local husband and father to 4 and an experienced medical device director. He was born and raised in Central California, where he played water polo competitively. He attended BYU Hawaii and continued his water polo career into college. He served a mission for his church in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Jeff is an avid surfer and has traveled the world surfing remote reef breaks. He currently enjoys teaching his kids the love for the outdoor lifestyle San Clemente offers. Mr. Jeff Provance Jr., please say hello to the audience.
Hello, everyone.
Jeff is a small business owner and owns Bloom's Irish Pub here in San Clemente. He and his wife recently purchased the business from his father, another local business owner. He has been a San Clemente resident for almost 10 years. Mr. Charlie Smith, please say hello to the audience.
Good evening, San Clemente.
Charlie has over 20 years of experience in banking, asset management, and alternative investments, including experience in investing in public and private debt. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in finance from USC and completed his MBA from the University of Rochester. Charlie served as a U.S. Army Ranger, and as Commissioner for the San Clemente Beach Parks and Recreation Commission. He has volunteered for the Boy Scouts of America with one son who just earned his Eagle Scout and another son on track for the same accomplishment. Charlie is also the proud father of a daughter. He has been active in his church leadership and has been married for over 20 years. As a reminder, this event is a forum for candidates to voice their ideas and give the voters a chance to get to know them and to learn about their positions on important issues in our city. This is not a debate format, and the guidelines that we ask each of the candidates to follow is to treat each other respectfully and not to address one another directly. This is your opportunity to speak directly to potential voters. We also ask the audience to please be respectful in your questions to the candidates. We will now start with each of the candidates giving their opening statements. Mr. Chris Duncan, you get to go first.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Well, first of all, I do want to give thanks to Jim, Susie, Arlen, and Alex with the Chamber, and of course, Steve with First Amendment Voice for having us on tonight. I'm really glad to be here and address the residents of San Clemente. As you mentioned, I live in Talega with my wife, Haley, a successful businesswoman, and our 3 elementary school age kids, Brooklyn, Olivia, and my mini-me, Rico. As Jim mentioned, I spent 16 years as a prosecutor and a senior attorney at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, where I worked hand in hand with law enforcement officers and special agents to prosecute criminals, protect our community, and accomplish our national security mission. I will use my law enforcement, emergency management, and supervisory experience to bring a diverse set of people and interests together to get things done for San Clemente. San Clemente deserves professional, serious, honest leadership. That's what I did at DHS, and it's what I'll do for you.
Thank you, Chris. Next opening statement from Mr. Bill Hart.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Bill Hart, and for 40 years, I've been a resident of San Clemente. I met my wife here. We raised our sons here, and we did all sorts of school, sports, and all kinds of activities. Almost 22 years ago, I got involved in city activities, and since then, as a community activist, I've accomplished a lot of things. I played a part in getting the beach trail built. I helped prevent double tracking along our coastline. I helped help make our ocean clean and healthy. I helped write our city's general plan, and I helped to get us more deputies. People know me as a team player. That's one of the reasons why I'm endorsed by more than 10 mayors, former mayors, I should say. A proven track record, 2 decades of dedication of the San Clemente way of life, and with real accomplishments to show for it. That's why I'm asking for your vote for City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next up, Mr. Aaron Washington.
Hey, thank you. For everybody, I've been living here since 2006. And let me say with this caveat, I would say my family's been living here because most of that time I was always deployed or traveling for our country. But with that said, I want to bring a fresh perspective to the council. Already with everything going on, when we say team player, I want to be a person on the council that will stand on my own decision based off what I'm running for. What I'm telling the voters, what I will do. I know there's a lot of controversy on social media, but I will stand for what I say I stand for. I'm not a politician. We all know that. I'm not running as an expert person on San Clemente. I'm coming in with my leadership experience, working with diverse teams as I have for 30 years of my 35 in the Navy. And I want to bring that to the team. I want to work with all these gentlemen. And if I'm not elected, I'm still going to get involved. So those that say Aaron don't have experience, I will gain experience. But I know right now, I'm a quick study, and we'll talk more about what I want to do. But I know right now, I've been out there the biggest one I've been seeing is the homeless situation. I'm all about public safety.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll get to those items. The 1 minute goes fast and these openings.
Okay, and
So
thanks.
we'll get back to you on some of those items. Next up, Mr. Charlie Smith.
Well, thanks to the chamber and thanks to First Amendment Voice for creating this platform for us to be able to talk to the citizens of this good city. I'm grateful to the other candidates for their commitment to serve the people of this city and the city. I'm running, I am a pro-business candidate. In my day job, I help businesses in various aspects, most especially pertaining to their finances. I want to help the businesses of our city to succeed and be able to bring that acumen to be able to help them to succeed. I'm about quality of life for our city, and really what that boils down to more than anything is making sure that we don't have a toll road through our city, making sure that we can meaningfully address homelessness, maintain our historic element, and make our city better. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Next up, Mr. Gene James.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Councilmember Gene James. First, I want to thank the Chamber and thank the First Amendment Voice, and mostly thank the audience for being here. As your council member, I took a solemn oath to make us safer, stronger, and more prosperous. I promised to work with everyone in that endeavor. I have done so. I'm endorsed by former Mayor Dan Bain, by retired Sheriff Brad Gates, by OCFA retired Chief Chip Prather, and by State Senator Pat Bates. Together, we'll continue to fight for business, quality of life, public safety, and we'll stop that toll road. This is who I am, and this is where I stand. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Councilman. Next up, Mr. Jeff Provance Jr.
I would like to thank the Chamber for this opportunity. Hello, my name is Jeff Provance Jr. I operate a pub in San Clemente. I'm running for council so the people have a voice, businesses have a voice. I will bring accountability to our current council. I don't have a NASCAR jacket full of sponsors. The only endorsement I seek is the people. If elected, I'll work with the people of our beautiful city to restore respect to our council and solve the issues regarding our city.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Patrick Minnehan.
Thank you, Mr. Wynne. Thank you, Mr. Miska. Looking forward to a nice next 2 hours, hour and 40 minutes now at this point in time. I've been a resident of San Clemente now since the year 2000. Been coming to this town since 1995 and seen some changes along the way. My wife and I, we've raised 4 children in this town. We now have 5 grandchildren and looking to continue to raise those grandchildren here in San Clemente as best we can. As mentioned in the introduction earlier, I've led diverse teams, diverse ethnicities, diverse gender, diverse skill sets throughout my 34-year career in healthcare. And one of the common goals within leading those teams is bringing those teams together because, one, they all have personal wins somewhere along the way, and it was my job to figure out what their individual personal wins were so that the team could lead their projects, their organizations, for the betterment of the organization throughout the careers. So looking forward to the next hour and a half. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Next up, Mr. Thor Johnson.
Thank you, Jim. First off, I'd like to thank Mr. Jim, the San Clemente Chamber of Commerce and their sponsor, as well as everyone else here tonight for putting this on and being a part of it. My name is Thor Johnson, and I'm running for San Clemente City Council to protect the natural rights and enhance the quality of life of all citizens and businesses of San Clemente. What that means is keeping our beaches, businesses, and churches open for protecting our natural rights and to enhance and maintain the quality of life that we all enjoy here in San Clemente. Some of my policies include stopping the toll road, removing the nuclear waste from San Onofre, getting our hospital back, and putting an end to all this nuisance crime here in town, like stealing the e-bikes. I look forward to sharing my policies with you all later this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Mr. Jeff Wellman.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Glad to come off mute. Happy to listen to everyone's introductions. My name is Jeff Wellman. I'm also running for the 4-year term on the San Clemente City Council. Like I said, I'm a local father to 4 children, a husband to a wife, Eliza, and we're just really, grateful to be a part of this wonderful community. What I'm looking to do is restore the city's council so there's cohesiveness and true leadership during these stressful and chaotic times we're all experiencing as citizens of San Clemente. What I'm also looking to do is restore the quality of lifestyle for San Clemente as well by adding a few more parks, stopping that toll road. A lot of us are, absolutely against the toll road, making it easier for businesses to thrive in San Clemente. It's very hard to open up a business in San Clemente. I think we've all heard that from our local business owners. And finally, putting people first. People over politics is my slogan, and I'm sticking by that. And I would love to represent the families of San Clemente and be a voice for change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the pre-composed questions from the Forum Committee. And Mr. Bill Hart will start off with the first question, which is, what specific actions will you take to improve business and industry in San Clemente for the long run? You're on mute, Bill.
I'm sorry.
There we
San
go.
Clemente has been famously difficult to do business in, and we need to change that culture. First of all, with regard to permitting, there just continue to be a litany of self-improvement projects, and I'm now convinced that the problem is not in the ways in which we do permitting, but the culture of the permits, basically the building department itself. And we need to change that. We need to change that with good city leadership. Second, as far as recovery from the COVID crisis, we have to allow businesses to have a little bit more freedom than we would normally grant. That may mean relaxing some of our code, relaxing some of our standards. And we need to just learn how to say yes. And finally, if something is out of code or out of spec, help people meet code instead of just saying, no, you can't do that.
Thank you, Bill. Next is Mr. Aaron Washington. And if anyone needs me to repeat the question along the way, please feel free to ask.
No, that's good. Thank you. I know Bill pretty much covered a lot, but as I was listening to other council meetings, they have a system called Track It that's supposed to speed the process up. It was news to me that it was already around for like 10 years. So we definitely have to work on whatever the process is to get those permits and things through the system. And also maybe look at some of our neighboring cities that have it right and see what we can learn from them. We want to standardize the process. We want to minimize the fees and the costs, make it user-friendly for the business owners, and let them feel that we want them to succeed, and their success is our success. Their business is going to feed the city and give our children jobs, and it's a good for all. It's a win-win. So we definitely want to put that energy in there and make the process as easy and smooth as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Next up, Mr. Charlie Smith.
Thank you. I think a couple ideas here. One is, I know that other people are going to be talking about this, but we need to make sure that we hire a city manager that understands that a good portion of our revenue is derived from sales tax, and that we need to have an environment whereby businesses are attracted to our area, either attracted to our area or attracted to staying in our area, so that the city can continue to be successful on that front. We need to have business-friendly policies. We need to be good assistance to the businesses in our area. One of the things that came up that I had been involved with in my banking career was helping companies with PPP loans. We need that type of mindset. I'd like to establish aspirational branding for the city. I would also like to have our retail areas be more experience-based, like in North Beach and Community Real and Del Mar, where people have an experience as they go shopping. Finally, I really like the outdoor dining. I think that's something that we should look at making permanent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next up, Councilman Gene James.
So how to improve the business climate? First off, we need the appointment of a permanent economic development director at a senior level who has business experience, and additionally have the additional job of being an ombudsman for business. Second, we need to streamline the permit and planning process. Recently, I pushed through City Council the program called Track It. Track It existed as a database and project management program in the city, but not in a permitting and planning process. This will make our permitting and planning process paperless and will streamline. Next, we need to create an environment in which people want to do business in our city. We need to invest in human capital. We need to create internships. We even need to reach out to separating service members, bring them into San Clemente as interns, and create a great workforce in San Clemente. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Next up, Mr. Jeff Provance Jr.
That's a difficult question to answer. You don't know what tomorrow brings in regards to new mandates due to COVID. Having said that, we need to hire a city manager that's committed to small business in this city. We need to ensure we're giving businesses the tools they need to succeed. Speeding up the tedious permit process will be of great help for a small business. Another will be working with the California ABC on outdoor dining. That's something that's being overlooked and most aren't aware of. Candidates and council want to extend outdoor dining or make it seasonal. I'm all for that. When the state emergency is over, though, the ABC may revoke our COVID-19 temporary catering authorization. That means no alcohol in outdoor areas. So that is something we need to pay attention to and work with the ABC on. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up, Mr. Patrick Minnehan.
Mr. Wynne, can you go ahead and just maybe repeat the question? We're probably like halfway through the candidates. Just want to make sure the audience remembers.
We would be happy to do that. What specific actions will you take to improve business and industry in San Clemente for the long run?
Hi. So, as you look through the businesses and various conversations that I've had with folks throughout the city, some of the common challenges that some of the businesses have discussed is that of these, and what we've already heard today is these permitting processes and such. So what we need to do is take a step back and let's really look at our policies. Let's really look at the zoning challenges that we've had, but we have to look at this for all businesses. Personally, we all look at the restaurants, the gyms, the hair salons, the things that we use all the time, but there's more businesses in this town. We got a hospital that has been sitting vacant for 4.5 years because of zoning issues from the owner, the moderator that was running the organization. So again, we need to look at these policies and zoning for the entire city. And so that we can actually move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Thor Johnson.
Thanks. The first specific action that I will take to improve business for the long run in San Clemente is propose local ordinance that says that the government does not have the right to close your business just out of opinion. So we're going to make sure that our businesses stay open, our beaches that attract our neighbors stay open. And as an entrepreneur, I'm aware that the city can be a benefit or can have challenges when opening up a business. So some of the things that I propose are no new taxes, strengthening the relationship between the Chamber of Commerce and the City Council by being a liaison, and regulatory relief that reduces barriers for permitting. And finally, guiding city spending towards to support local businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next up, Mr. Jeff Wellman.
I think there's been a lot of actually great ideas shared. We have quite a select, good group of candidates here. I think first and foremost, San Clemente is small business, and small business is San Clemente. Our heart of the town in Del Mar and along El Camino Real is made up of, mom and pop small businesses and up towards those mid-sized businesses. I think, if you talk to a lot of the entrepreneurs, San Clemente is filled with entrepreneurs down here in business. That's why it's a high-cost place to live here. If you ask them, the hardest thing about starting a business is actually the barrier to entry. And I think that goes back to our city. We need to change some coding. We need to change some regulations, as Mr. Gene James pointed out, our current council member, and streamline that process so that the barrier to entry to open a business in San Clemente is a lot easier and more robust. And we can actually go out and have a liaison, like Thor Johnson was saying, and connect with the people that want to bring business to San Clemente instead of waiting for them to show up here and hitting them with the local codes and regulations.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Next up, Mr. Chris Duncan.
Well, first thing I'll say is the COVID-19 pandemic and the failure to properly handle it at the federal, state, and county level have put an unwarranted strain on our local businesses, which are the lifeblood of our Spanish Village. Having worked at a high level in a highly functional government organization, I know that government should help, not hinder our businesses. So I support taking extraordinary measures to support them, such as Jonathan Lightfoot and city staff took with outdoor dining, which I agree with other candidates should become permanent. And I think, by the way, we should keep Jonathan on as an acting economic development director until we find a permanent person for that position. And to further protect our local businesses and help them survive and attract new businesses, as has been discussed, I think we should completely overhaul our planning, building, and engineering divisions. They're notoriously slow in responding to permit requests, and we've got to cut red tape. That means automating processes, adding staff and contractors, and this will expedite processing of permits and provide needed transparency, flexibility, and predictability for our local business community.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will now move on to question number 2. And Aaron Washington will start us off. And the question is, what will you do to make sure our local business owners have a seat at the table in pertinent city discussions?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that question, but hearing that now, I would say when we have our council meetings, I would say if we could have a person, maybe from the chamber or something that represents all the business, be a part of the meeting and be able to feedback and brief us on concerns of all the business owners as one person. That's what I would do.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Washington. And next, Mr. Charlie Smith.
Well, I, for one, and I would imagine all the candidates are in the same boat, don't want to be making decisions in a vacuum, that's for sure. You cannot make unilateral decisions without the input of the business owners in the area. Otherwise, you're gonna run into some trouble for sure. So along those lines, I've had a few ideas in this vein. One I would share is I'd like to create a business council, if you will. It could be formal, it could be informal. It doesn't necessarily matter how it's structured, but really designed just to make sure that we receive input from the business owners in the area. That way we're well informed as we're making decisions and voting on various issues that become before the council. I have some other ideas around that, but that's probably the biggest one. Just making sure that we've got a pulse on what the business owners are thinking and what they would like to see happen. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next up, Councilman Gene James.
So one of the things to consider is we have a homeless committee, we have a public safety committee, we have Parks and Rec committee. What we don't have and we need to establish is a business community, a business committee or commission with with the economic development director, I'm suggesting being part of that, a council member being on that committee, and representatives from the chamber, from the DBA, from around town, from the Rancho San Clemente Business Park, the Talega Business Park. And I'm a believer in servant leadership. So that means ideas bubble up. And I think this is a group that could bubble up ideas to the city council that we never would think of without their input, because they're where the rubber meets the road. The other thing I'd like to do is, I should have done it earlier, is thank the small business community for working through COVID and doing all the great things, providing services to the community during COVID. I think we should all take a moment and think about how well they did and the challenges they had during that time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Next up, Jeff Provance Jr.
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
I'd be happy to. What will you do to make sure our local business owners have a seat at the table in pertinent city discussions?
I agree with what Charlie and Jean was saying about maybe like having a business council. I feel like the DBA and the chamber kind of represent businesses a little bit, but I feel the ones that aren't with Del Mar or Pier Bowl Address get forgotten about sometimes. So it'd be nice to form some form of a council to where we can bounce ideas to the city and work together and just make sure the businesses are getting what they need, what we need to ensure that we're paying our employees and helping each other out, I guess. I got lost on that one, sorry.
You did great. Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Patrick Minnehan.
Thank you, Mr. Wynne. So, as you pull these businesses together, and again, as I mentioned before, we have to look at the city as a whole for all the businesses. And part of what I've done over my last 34 years is pull teams together. So we need to pull the businesses together. The great ideas that have come up so far about bringing another committee to the table. Let's look at current committees. Do they need some fresh leadership, some fresh blood? We do need fresh ideas at the table to expand on. Right? You can't grow unless you have these ideas. So we do need to bring everybody together, listen to them, bubble them up, as Mr. James said, and take those ideas and bring it to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Thor Johnson.
To make sure that all business owners and businesses have a seat at the table, first off, my policy is going to be an open door policy. My door is always going to be open, and I'm going to be asking for advice from my fellow peers and business owners here in San Clemente. And the important issues, I think it's important that we leave it up to the voters and we put it on the ballot for the community to decide. With that being said, in addition to being a liaison between the City Council and the Chamber of Commerce, I also am going to propose that we create a business commission with a board of directors that is formed from different sectors of local leaders. And that way they'll be able to represent their sectors and everyone's voices will be heard. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next up, Mr. Jeff Wellman.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think for all the business owners actually tuning into this forum, I think their ears are perked up on this one for sure. I like the idea. I've actually coined the term the San Clemente Business Coalition. I think we could form, if you take all the different business coalitions that we have in San Clemente, the North Beach Association for Business, we have the Del Mar, the Pier Bowl, the Talega Business Park. If we get a member from each one of those delegations, right, and we form the SCBC committee without too much extra, I would say, heavyweight organization type structure, they can interact directly with the council, maybe set aside one night a month or one night a quarter to interact with them, to bring their ideas and their issues to the forefront of the city's council, and also talk with the mayor and hopefully soon to be a city manager, and really get us deep into what they're facing so we can respond to what they need. that's something I would like to bring to San Clemente, and that's the San Clemente Business Coalition.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Next up, Mr. Chris Duncan.
All right, well, a lot of people don't know this, but council actually has a seat on the Chamber of Commerce, but I understand that the assigned council member has not taken advantage of this opportunity of late. As I advised the chamber when we met, I would seek out that assignment and participate in all chamber functions that I could. At DHS, we learned that the best ideas came from the stakeholders that were involved, the people who are most affected by a contemplated policy. So I would hold town halls and actively engage with the business community and other stakeholders to ensure they support potential measures before they're presented to council.
Very good, thank you. Next up, Mr. Bill Hart.
Well, I go back, you know, a little ways, maybe 20 years ago, and we did have an economic development director named Dave Lund. He was actually a very effective guy. When he retired, his position was not replaced. What did happen is a few years later, under previous city managers, we had planners doing outreaches to various parts of the business community, such as North Beach, the downtown, Los Molinos, and then the Rancho San Clemente and Talega business parks. So where do we go from here? Well, I'm not convinced that putting together a council is the best idea, and I tend to go with bottom-up thinking. I would like to get that outreach going again, where we have planners or an economic development director going out into the business community and meeting with these neighborhood business groups and try to get information on the ground instead of trying to centralize it in a committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. We're moving on to question number 3. Stories, including tonight, are frequently shared about the exhaustive and lengthy process to meet the city's requirements for permits, licensing, and building planning. What do you think the reasons are behind this? And what specific action would you take to ensure San Clemente is a city that encourages businesses to thrive instead of requiring extensive red tape and delays? I know a couple of you spoke pretty extensively on that about the question of what you would do to improve business. So if you feel like maybe you would like to share some other ideas other than what's happening with the city permitting as far as improving business and industry in San Clemente, then I think that would be appropriate. So the first person up, if you want to answer this question directly and get in more detail, that would be great. And that would be Mr. Charlie Smith.
Well, I certainly don't want to sound like a broken record, but a lot of this will be based on our city manager. The council needs to establish the philosophy, but the city manager needs to push that down into the various areas that report into him. And as part of establishing that philosophy, that new culture, we'll be establishing a pro-business environment. We obviously have to be mindful of our historical heritage and maintaining the beauty of our city. I know that there's some that claim that slows us down. You know, if that's part of the process whereby things are slowed down, we need to talk about and think about that. But it really, more than anything, I think it takes more of an end-to-end analysis to figure out where the bottlenecks are and to be able to solve for them. I love the fact that we're talking about upgrading our technology. I hope it'll help.
Very good, thank you. Next up, Councilman Gene James.
So there's rarely a day go by that I don't walk up and down Del Mar meeting a new shopkeeper that I hadn't met or speaking to restaurants. I also get out to the business park. It's essential for council members to get out and know the community. With that being said, I'm going to go back to the Track It program. I pushed the Track It program through City Council with the SB2 grants we're going to get for it, we're going to have a net cost of about $75,000. And it's going to make our permits and planning process paperless. Anyone that's been in City Hall lately will see entire rooms of paper. We're going to get rid of that paper, and that's going to streamline our approval processes. But with that being said, and Mr. Hart mentioned it earlier, we still have a cultural issue to deal with that people in City Hall need to understand, that those people coming in with those plans, those people paying for permits, those people who are trying to build in this city are our customers, and they're not treated like customers. And we have to become customer centric. And that goes across a lot of different areas in the city. We need to realize that those people who are bringing in sales tax, those people paying property tax, are the city's customers. And at the end of the day, they are the boss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Next up, Mr. Jeff Provance Jr.
Permit process, let's face it, it's crap. We aren't pro-business. We need to speed up the process. It took me over a month to get a permit just for patio dining. It felt like Jonathan Lightfoot was dragging his feet, and it was unacceptable. I have a friend that's opening up a brew pub in the Los Molinos business district. It's taken him over 3 years just to get his permits to build his building. He's finally been able to secure all the permits he needs, and he's targeting a March opening date. I don't want to work with the planning and figure out why the process is so tedious, why it's taking so long, because end result is this is people's businesses and they have to get to work. So that's what I would do. I would put pressure on the planning department, figure out why it takes so long.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Patrick Minnehan.
Thank you, Mr. Wynne. So in my last role as a Chief Information Officer at a small rural hospital up in the state of Washington last year and early this year, when they asked me, and they had a huge customer service issue, and it really was all about process. Now, granted, they were rural, their technology was not up to speed, and we had to jump through a lot of hoops just to upgrade the technology, but the technology has been available for years. I think what COVID has actually proven to this to everybody out in the United States is that people can work from home and work from home effectively and get the job done. I've seen several businesses that are not in the service industry, i.e. a restaurant, but other businesses be able to still have their employees hold a job and work, bring in revenue to a city, yet still work remotely from home. So technology should not be a barrier. What we really need to come back to is let's look at the policies. What's preventing these businesses to get through this process? Why do we have to have vacant buildings? The hospital, Miramar, for years, I've lived in this town since 2000, been coming since 95. Miramar's been vacant at least 25 years. I don't know what's been holding it up, and we do need to get to the bottom of it. We need to back it out, change policies, change zonings. If we have to, as a city council, say, hey, we messed up, but let's go fix it and go forward because we got to be friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minnehan. Next up, Mr. Thor Johnson.
Mr. Jim, will you please repeat the question?
Sure. Stories are frequently shared about the exhaustive and lengthy process to meet the city's requirements for permits, licensing, and building planning. What do you think the reasons are behind this, and what specific action would you take to ensure San Clemente is a city that encourages businesses to thrive instead of requiring extensive red tape and delays?
Thank you. So it's a culture issue. The city has too many employees and even council members who sometimes put their opinions first rather than serving the community first. Not everyone working for the city has the same attitude. And the attitude, what that they should be is that they could do all that they can to support the community. So I think some policies need to be changed. Like I said before, I'm going to propose reducing regulatory barriers for permitting and also create policies that can safely expedite certain permitting processes so people don't have to wait so long.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next up, Mr. Jeff Wellman.
Yeah, I think this has definitely been one of the chief complaints I've got while campaigning down Del Mar Street and actually throughout all the business parks, you know, trying to get voters to vote for me based on my platform, and that is a pro small business agenda platform. I think three things starting off with to resolve these issues, and I'm sad to hear, you know, Jeff Provance Jr. owns a bar here in town, couldn't get his patio open. That's why I think a lot of us are running, is to end that type of stuff and to move forward so our business owners can succeed. I think we need more, someone alluded to earlier, human capital in this department within the city. So we have more people looking at our city code, interacting with our businesses. I think it comes down to human capital and efficiency. Like I said, if you walk into the city clerk's office, it's just stacked with paper. And that goes to the technology aspect. We have to streamline it. I support Gene James' idea of track it using the grant money. It's not a lot to our city, and get paperless. Let's streamline this. The hardest part, you know, about opening up a business is that timeline when you're first opening. That capital gets expanded and run down real fast. So I think streamlining it with technology is the number one key, along with human capital.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Next up, Mr. Chris Duncan.
Yeah, well, I don't want to rehash what I said earlier. I did talk about cutting red tape and expediting the permitting process. I do really think our building and planning divisions are underfunded. I think that there's some better leadership at the city manager level that can be done, and they're not doing everything that they need to do to help our small businesses, and that includes Jeff Provance here on the call today. You know, another restaurant, Adele's, where I used to take my family, just had to close. I don't know everything about the situation, but I do think she could have been helped more by a welcoming business environment and a council that would have bent over backwards to do everything to let her make whatever infrastructure improvements she may have needed to make. You know, COVID in some ways, such as outdoor dining, has fixed that logjam. It's allowed us to think outside the box and try new things. But there is a culture that has inhibited business. I think that leadership starts at the top. So we need a very pro-business city manager who has a lot of financial experience, is going to take whatever steps needed, set that agenda, and hold staff accountable. And that does need to have that financial experience as well to make sure that we do all of this and watch our budget as well.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Next up, Mr. Bill Hart.
Well, having a history in this city, I guess I can't help but look back on you know, how we got to where we are today. And I do remember after I believe it was the 2012 election, I was quoted in the paper stating that I really felt that small businesses were in for a rough ride because of the incoming city council. Actually, we have had a council that through the years has been hostile to small businesses. Looking at the field of candidates right now, I believe that has a good chance of changing. And also bringing in a city manager who is given marching orders to start clearing the decks and get things done, get permits issued, cut through red tape. That is going to help as well. I've seen pro-business staff leave the city. Two really good planners that we used to have that were pro-business. That was a shame. We're just going to have to change the culture in this city and get things turned around.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Last on this question, Mr. Aaron Washington.
All right, like people are saying, it starts from the top with the city manager. I know it's not practical to have a city manager that lives in our city, but you know, it starts with the top. He should be reviewing the outstanding permits and stuff with his directors, with the originating date and where they're at, so he can ask those hard questions. You know, provide a mission statement for his people where it's customer service, have feedback, customer service surveys that the business owners that are submitting things that could submit and get feedback. But like I said, from the top, lead by example and just actually care. That's all I got.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Leading off the fourth question will be Councilman Gene James. And the question is, San Clemente was born on Del Mar. To many, Del Mar is San Clemente. Because of the popularity of downtown, parking is a notorious issue. Lack of space has been accentuated further now that outdoor dining areas take up much of the already scarce stalls. What is your vision for the future of Del Mar?
So as I say, I walk Del Mar most every day. And, you know, I feel I have been a pro-business council member. I have no doubt I've been a pro-business council member. And right now we have a situation, and a lot of shopkeepers are concerned about the amount of space being taken, parking space being taken up. And at the same time, we have this wonderful outdoor dining thing going on that I was one of them took the lead to get that. But Jim, your term vision is what we need. We've had studies, and some of the studies are just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. What we need to do is we need to have vision here. We need to look at how we're going to finance a parking structure. We can't kick this can down the road anymore, because even if today we approved a parking structure, we'd be 2 or 3 years in the making. A parking structure with 500 parking slots would probably cost the city around $7 million. We need to figure out how to finance that. Additionally, it needs to be a subterranean parking, in which on top of that area, we would have a park-like environment and actually improve the quality of life down there. We have an excellent lot behind the senior center between Avenida Rosa and Avenida Victoria that would work perfectly for a subterranean parking slot structure with a park-like environment capping it.
Thank you, Councilman. Next up, Mr. Jeff Provance Jr.
Let's face it, we're going to be dealing with COVID for a little while, so outdoor dining is here to stay for a while. I agree with Mr. James on some form of a parking structure. I live spitting distance from Del Mar, so I deal with the parking issues in my neighborhood all the time. A parking structure is a fabulous idea for our city. We can probably finance it with paid parking, and I'm sure that would pay for itself within a certain amount of years, but that's my ideas, some form of a parking structure.
Very good, thank you. Next up, Mr. Patrick Minnehan.
Thank you, Mr. Wynne. So when you talk about a vision for what's going to happen with parking down to Del Mar, I mean, over the years, there was a trolley system that came through that assisted a little bit. COVID, as Mr. Provance indicated, yep, COVID's going to be here. And outdoor dining is great. It's about time that the city has allowed outdoor dining. This has happened all across the world, all across Southern California, the other cities. You look at some of the other Southern California beach cities like Seal Beach, Huntington Beach. So they have parking structures and they have multi-use buildings. Something needs to happen. I don't know what the previous studies have indicated. As Mr. James had stated, we've done plenty of them in the past, but we can definitely take a look at it and pull a team together, pull a committee together. Let's really talk through it. And then, yeah, financing a structure is definitely going to be part of the agenda somehow, some way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minnehan. Next up, Mr. Thor Johnson.
Thank you. My vision to deal with the parking issues on Del Mar is the city has received a grant from the county to operate our city trolley during summer months. Now, since the city did not operate the trolley this summer, we still have some funds available that we could use to bring our trolley back now and for this winter. So what I propose is having our trolley 7 days a week, year round. And I think a parking structure potentially could be necessary, but maybe it could be underground. And I think the best idea is having the trolley pick people up at North Beach and South San Clemente. There's plenty of parking there, and bring them into Del Mar and throughout San Clemente. I think that's the best way to deal with it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next up, Mr. Jeff Wellman.
Yeah, I think this is an important issue. Take some, vision and insight of currently what's happening. I too struggle. You're trying to go to lunch downtown right now. It's hard to find parking. Trying to support these businesses on Del Mar and elsewhere all throughout San Clemente, but specifically downtown on Del Mar and near El Camino Real where that intersects. I've seen other cities implement the what actually Gene mentioned, the subterranean parking structure really well. And then on top of that parking structure, it's actually a park, some restaurants, benches, seating area, things like that. So it's not a disturbance to the eye, and we can kind of build it how we want it to basically blend in with the Ole Hansen style of downtown in San Clemente, right? So it's not this big obscene parking structure or kind of this narrow little alleyway leading into a parking structure. It's something that's going to need some creativity and a lot of engineering work, and I'm not sure the public wants to finance that just yet. So maybe a privatization of that might occur, but definitely open to speaking with the business owners down there to see what their thoughts are, especially the citizens, because that's a big deal.
Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Chris Duncan.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was looking at the other day, I don't know if it was in the newspaper or what, but there was some pictures of classic Del Mar and the Pier Bowl, and there were people doing outdoor dining. So it's interesting. It's sort of like Back to the Future. We bring back this idea, but it's actually not that different than what has happened in the past out on Del Mar, maybe when people didn't drive as much. By the way, I like the promenade idea, right? We should have a wide open walking space that allows businesses to have their products out where people can see, and there's a lot of foot traffic through there. But that leads us to the parking issue. So I support the trolley like some others. We have the outlets, which were very controversial, but there's massive parking lots there. Let's take advantage of those. Let's bring back the trolley when it's healthy and public safety allows it. But get people moved into the Del Mar area from those lots. And we also need to bring back bus routes so that those of us in Talega don't need to drive downtown every time we want to go visit the beach or go down go to shop in Del Mar or eat at the restaurants. I support adequate parking minimums for all new developments so we don't run into these problems long term. The underground structure is a good idea, but we need to think about this. People freaked out about parking when we started outdoor dining, and all those doomsday scenarios didn't happen. So we can handle these parking issues as long as we put them in perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Next up, Mr. Bill Hart.
Well, parking structures, that used to be the third rail issue, and no one would step on it. I am actually happy to hear that that we're beginning to discuss it. I have a very specific idea for a parking structure, and that is to convert the lot that is behind the library and adjacent to the community center. It's already one grade above level on the side street. So that almost gives you 2 levels above grade without raising the height of the parking at all. And then go maybe a grade below and have a subterranean parking structure that would probably give us somewhere in the neighborhood of an extra 100 parking spaces. I penciled it out from a cost perspective, and at $1.50 an hour parking fees, the whole thing pencils out. You get cost recovery in about 20 years. Which is right along where we should be looking. So that's my idea for parking on Del Mar.
Very good, thank you. Next up, Mr. Aaron Washington.
Okay, all those were fresh perspectives. For as far as in the short term with COVID, I think the analogy of what we're doing in the restaurants, using the trolleys that are open air, mark off seats like they do and shuttle them from the parking lot from the outlet up there. Like I said, lots of parking. And once we recover from the impacts of COVID budget-wise, look at like what Bill was referencing to and see where we fit, because we haven't stopped. It's not over yet. We don't know how bad it's going to get. But definitely get the trolleys going at half or 40% capacity and shuttle. Thank you.
Very good. Next up, sharing their vision for the future of Del Mar is Charlie Smith.
Well, I think things are going to remain complicated with COVID for the foreseeable future. So my comments are based more on a post-COVID environment. I think that we should make the trolley permanent. I think that everybody likes the trolley. It had great success, and obviously would help with the parking situation that we face if we are going to make outdoor dining permanent. You know, we have this arrangement with Lyft. We have Uber drivers. You know, utilizing those services can continue to be beneficial. We can find a place for a drop-off on Del Mar that would be suitable and hopefully manage the traffic. The e-bike revolution is real. Having solutions for parking down there for e-bikes is a great idea. I am open to a parking structure. Let's figure out a smart place to put it. There are financing alternatives that we can look at and explore that would not be direct obligations of the city.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Charlie Smith. Well, we finished the Chamber of Commerce scripted questions. As a note to the audience, none of the candidates knew these questions in advance. Now, Steve Miska will moderate the audience Q&A so that you can ask the questions on your mind, audience. Here you go, Steve.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you to the candidates for your answers, and the Chamber of Commerce for helping our community better understand where the candidates stand in matters relating to our business community. Now it's the audience turn. I'll remind the candidates you can see the audience questions that have risen to the top of the queue. And we also have some other questions that have come in via email. And if that augments some of the voting, I'll inform you in advance. You can also see the current order of response in your chat function. So Mr. Jeff Provance will go first when I finish these opening comments. Members of the audience, many of you have already emailed in or submitted questions via the Q&A. We currently have 46 open right now. If you haven't found it yet and you'd like to, simply go to the bottom of your screen and click on the Q&A function. You can then type in a question. You can also vote on questions that are already there. And the ones with the most votes are going to rise to the top of the queue. So you'll see where they are right now. We will try to get to as many of your questions as possible as time allows. If it does not get answered live tonight by our candidates, we will pass them on to their campaigns so they can be sure to let you know where they stand. And with that, let's get to the first question. Candidates, you will see the San Onofre question is at top. I will also let you know we had 5 other citizens email in questions in advance about spent fuel at San Onofre. So I will read that question to Mr. Provance first, and I'm just going to add one additional item that you'll hear right now, and that's from a story from the Orange County Register on this particular topic. Roger Johnson emailed in, perhaps the most important issue for the city is the nuclear waste dump. Do you support the National Academy of Sciences proposal to do cancer research in a 50-kilometer radius around San Onofre? And then you can see Mr. Cosgrove's question there, which says, do you accept the current on-site spent nuclear fuel storage out in the parking lot at San Onofre? What should the city do? If there is a leak, how is the city prepared for this? Mr. Provance.
I definitely support a study on to see if there's cancer effects. Public safety should always remain number one. I honestly don't know if the city is prepared for a worst case scenario. I'd like to see if council has a plan in place. If not, we should definitely get one in place. I trust the current on-site plan. I'm sure they have done their due diligence and know how to store the nuclear fuel. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Patrick Minnehan.
Thank you, Mr. Miska. It was interesting. I was asked a similar question earlier today by one of the local papers. So maybe a little tee up. But number one, to answer about the study, yes, let's do it. Within healthcare, you know, there is various aspects of things that can happen. With respect to what's going on with the storage of that nuclear waste, number one, I am pretty sure that we have an emergency preparedness plan. I know as a resident, I was mailed iodine pills well in advance when the nuclear power plant was still in operation. Now that it's being in storage, not so much. But this is also federal level. and we need to find out who we need to work with at the state and federal level. The plan was years ago that this nuclear waste was going to go to Nevada, but from what I understand, Senator Harry Reid shut that down. So again, this is a federal issue. The city needs to advance it. I don't know what the exact steps need to be, but I'm more than willing to tackle that problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thor Johnson.
Thank you. Will you please repeat the question again?
Yes, sir. The question about the National Academy of Sciences proposal to do cancer research in a 50-kilometer radius around San Onofre was cited in an Orange County Register story that Mr. Roger Johnson sent in, a recent story in the OC Register. And you can see in your Q&A function, Mr. Cosgrove sent in, do you accept the current on-site spent nuclear fuel storage out in the parking lot at San Onofre? What should the city do? If there is a leak, how is the city prepared for this?
Thank you. I support it, research, but with that being said, you know, regardless of what the findings are, I think we all can agree that it's probably not a good, you know, safety and environmental and health idea to have the spent nuclear waste here in San Onofre. So I think that that's one of the most important issues regarding our city. And my proposal is to take a more regional, state and federal approach, and to take care of this and get it removed. And I think the first step that we need to take is we need to establish a legal fund to hire some outside counsel to look into how we could start getting this moved away. Now, this is not just an issue for San Clemente, it's a regional issue. It's a regional issue for San Diego County, as well as our sister cities up north. So I'll work collaboratively, with all the different cities, as well as the state and federal agencies to get this removed. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Jeff Wellman.
Yeah, I think this is an important one. I serve San Onofre quite a bit. Trestles lowers that area. You can see the nuclear plant from down there. I would support a study you're saying on the cancer research. I didn't read that article today. I'm busy reading everyone else's campaign statements here on the screen. But I would support that as long as the citizens of San Clemente aren't funding that research, right? As long as we weren't, I'm not sure what's addressed that article or not, but I definitely would support that. We do have, you know, spent nuclear fuel sitting there. As far as their plan, I don't think it's a good plan to have in general. I'm sure they have their safety measures, everything set up from what I've seen and what I've read, and people I know who work there very personally. You know, I don't think it should be near the ocean. You take one natural disaster, one tsunami, one earthquake with those canisters next to a populace like Orange County and northern San Diego County with Camp Pendleton, it's a recipe for disaster. So I think it'd be in our citizens' best interest to move that out to somewhere less populated. I just think that's a common sense approach, but Thor is right. This is a national, regional, state issue, and we need to have outreach to those agencies to help us with that. So I would support moving that out probably more towards the desert where we're supposed to go in the first place.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Mr. Chris Duncan.
Yeah, well, we do know there are significant risks from storing the spent nuclear fuel where it's currently stored in those temporary canisters at San Onofre, because Congressman Mike Levin championed a study that gave us all those risks, and that study is available, by the way. Now, Congressman Levin is environmental attorney by trade. He's endorsing me because he knows he can work with me to help move that waste away from the shoreline. You know, I worked at Department of Homeland Security. I know that there's a terrorist threat to things that are located on the shore. There's earthquake faults. There's a lot of threats with where it's located currently. And so if we can't move it to a federal location, if that option gets shut down, you know, I would try to work with our state folks to move it to an isolated place in California and get those large storage containers that are long-term, not the temporary ones that they've decided to use. So I think the threat is very real. I think we do need to do studies to find out what are these effects that it's having on us. I mean, there's radiation being dumped into the ocean. I hope everybody knows that right now, periodically at songs. And so we should all become aware of this. This could be the biggest threat to us. We need to put pressure on the state government and the federal government to take action now.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. I would remind candidates, please pay attention to the time. We do want to be respectful to our audience and try to get through as many questions as we can, which there are many. Mr. Bill Hart.
Well, I spent many a pleasant day surfing out at San Onofre, and it was always a little bit unnerving that we were near a nuclear power plant. I don't believe for 1 minute that spent fuel rods should be stored anywhere close to the ocean, and they should be moved. Unfortunately, this is a federal issue. I do join Chris Duncan in saying that the state should get involved in this and start moving a little bit more proactively. As far as the study's concerned, absolutely. This is just another data point. We need more data. And so I am absolutely for that study. But as far as getting that fuel out of there, I will do whatever I can as a council member. But unfortunately, San Clemente's in a position where we can only be a squeaky wheel, which we should be, but we really need action on the part of our state and federal leaders.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Aaron Washington.
Yes, I would say for the study, most definitely. I know in my 35 years around nuclear power, the radiation attacks your thyroid. And myself, my thyroids are perfect. I take Synthroid every day for that reason as part of my disability. But long story short, definitely got to do the study because we can't see it. It's like a silent killer. On disposal, I agree with everybody. I don't trust the canisters that are there. I don't know if we have constant monitoring going on, but I would say, like you said, it's a federal, it's bigger than a federal problem. I would ask that even from our council level, us inquire with the feds, the Navy, on how we do with our submarines and our cruisers when we get rid of the expended cells up in Washington. How we transport it? Because I was like, can we use barges and transport it at sea the way we pull our Navy ships in Washington and Pac Northwest, and then they dispose of it? Is there other avenues? But leaving it there, I'm concerned about the integrity of the canisters for an earthquake magnitude of 8.0. Look at Fukushima, it's still leaking. And there was a study where we were receiving radiation from Fukushima. So yes, we definitely need to look at that. How's our city prepared? That's a good question.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. We're over time.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Charlie Smith.
My opinion on this is simple. And I'm echoing basically what everybody else has said. We cannot have those canisters on our coastline. Aaron mentioned Fukushima. That's exactly where my head goes. And as I think about this particular issue, we are also, as everybody knows, in an earthquake area. We need those canisters moved yesterday. I think what City Council can do is they can work with our congressmen, work with the NRC, work with the state to get this solved for. I think it's a very good point to make sure that we continue to push this forward. If we can establish another data point with potential carcinogenic effects from the storage, I think that's an important element too. But this has to be solved for. It's well overdue. We have to get this addressed yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councilmember James.
One thing I would recommend to each of the candidates is to contact Songs and take a tour of this facility. I've been through this facility 3 times. I've had 3 briefings, and additionally, I sit on the community engagement panel with Songs. I would like to tell you, doing all that, I feel better. I don't feel better. One thing to keep in mind is the city does indeed have a plan, but it's a plan that is in a book, and unless we exercise the plan, all it is a dusty book. And we're going to have to start looking at exercising that plan. In regards to the iodine pills and the sirens, because we no longer have an active nuclear power plant, all that went out the window. There's a different set of standards for a storage facility is what it is now. I agree with all the comments. We need to work with Congressman Levin. We need to get these things out of here. We're at the disadvantage that it's in another county. on property controlled by the Secretary of Navy in a facility controlled by the Secretary of Energy. And it is just incredibly complex. And if we were to start moving this nuclear material to Yucca Mountain, which is not open, but let's say it was, we would have to get, or they would have to get something in the neighborhood of 155 permits to move that nuclear material through local.
Thank you, council member. We need to move on. You can see the updated order of response in your chat function. You can also see the top voted question in your Q&A function, and it's on the STLU ordinance in San Clemente. I'll also let the candidates know we received 5 additional emails in advance on the short-term lodging unit ordinance. So the question that Mr. Minnehan gets to go first on is from Peter Wilkins. Do you support the short-term lodging unit ordinance that prohibits additional STLUs in our residential neighborhoods?
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Miska and Peter. So I don't know the exact wording of the ordinance, but when I think about this in a general sense, based on where I live here above the high school, you know, I've seen various businesses run out of homes, be it for the elderly care, be it for drug and alcohol abuse, or even Airbnb VRBOs. So the challenge that we have here is that you want to be business friendly. The Chamber of Commerce has actually put this on for us. And how do we be business friendly to that particular homeowner that actually wants to, you know, use their home to make some extra cash? Now, philosophically, I don't want to see a drug and alcohol facility right next to my own home. So again, I'll need to study this STLU a little bit more, but I got to think that there was some common sense when this ordinance came to be at the city level to put it into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thor Johnson.
Thank you. So first and foremost, San Clemente is a residential neighborhood and community meant for families and for retirees, for seniors. So with that being said, in general, I support the current ordinance that prohibits additional short-term lodging units. Now, with that being said, I do not know the exact wording. However, I do accept, and I do think that it's okay that if the owner lives on site, if they have multi-units and they want to rent it out, I think that's acceptable because the owner's on site and they could keep, you know, an eye on the house. There's a short-term living unit just a couple doors down from me. When there's guests there partying, you know, sometimes they're partying and, you know, all night long and it's really bad. So that's just not acceptable here in San Clemente, and maintaining and enhancing the quality of life is what I stand for. So
thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thanks.
Mr. Wellman.
I'll keep this one pretty simple. I'm adamantly against the drug rehab homes in our residential areas. I've seen what they do, even in Forester Ranch, down off Community de Los Mares. It's not good. I think in our residential neighborhoods to have those type of facilities mixed in there, adamantly against that. As far as this has happened in different cities across the U.S. against the short-term lodging unit ordinance, because like Thor was saying, you have partiers come in next door, they're partying. Thing we have to be considerate of is local people's investments in their rental homes. So hopefully that can be protected. But, you know, I am for preventing any type of more additional, like this ordinance said, of more of these short-term units being available. But I don't think we should impose that ordinance on the current ones, if that's what it states. I'm not too familiar with the current ordinance because there's a lot of verbiage in it. I haven't fact checked, but that's where I stand on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Mr. Duncan.
Yeah, this presents a, kind of a common theme for San Clemente, the tension between protecting everything that's unique about San Clemente and, allowing people to get the full use of their property. So I think we need to be very careful with restrictions on people's ability to use their house for different uses and perhaps for another stream of income, or perhaps for additional housing that may help with our affordable housing issue. But I share some of the sensitivities about having the sober living homes, and those come into those type of facilities. So I think regulation could solve this, making sure that there are standards that folks have to meet. An absolute prohibition just, I think, is a little bit too sweeping. I think that we can resolve this by again, setting standards, making sure we regulate this properly, and ensuring that those protections are in place without stifling someone's ability to use their home to its full benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Hart.
People buy property when it is zoned for a particular use, and they should have certain expectations as to that use. If they buy a residential property, the expectation ought to be that the use of that prior property is primarily residential. That protects neighborhoods, it protects people's quality of life. Now, sober living homes, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals had a very interesting ruling a few months ago on the city of Costa Mesa. And the city of Costa Mesa now has what I consider to be the model ordinance for sober living homes. As far as Airbnbs and vacation properties, well, we've grandfathered most of those properties that were being used, and now those people can get the use that they invested in. But I also agree that we need to have better enforcement for the bad actors, because we have had some problems, and we need to either pull licenses or do some other measures to get rid of the bad actors.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Washington.
The short answer for me is that I support the short-term lodging ordinance, and I use the analogy of a rental car. In the neighborhoods, you rent a car, people drive the car like they stole it, and they just have no concern on any care or maintenance of it, and likewise in our community. So I totally support that.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Mr. Smith.
My family and I have been big users of Airbnb. Wherever we travel, we like it a lot. As I look at the ordinance, I feel like the ordinance is trying to strike a balance between being business friendly and respecting people's property rights, in addition to making sure that our communities are peaceful and that people are able to have the quality of life that they're seeking in our area. Look, if people have issues with the ordinance, I would simply suggest that coming before the council, make proposals, let us know what your grievances are. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure out if there's ways that we can amend and improve. Let's talk it through. So that's what I would offer up.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councilmember James.
I lived the hell of living next door to a sober living house. And I will tell you, it is living hell. With that being said, 4 years ago, 2016, I believe, when council passed the current ordinance, I was not in favor of it. I didn't think it was going to be a workable ordinance. Well, I can tell you 4 years later, we have a fraction of the sober living houses. Most of them that do exist are state licensed drug rehab, and consequently very hard to get rid of. And as it relates to short-term rentals, we had a hearing on a short-term rental at council on a short-term rental in San Pablo. A neighbor came and testified to the fact that, I'm going to look at his words, my family and I want neighbors. We don't want someone's customers in our neighborhood. There's a lot of bad actors. There's, the frat parties, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties. And to have that, every weekend of your life is not a pleasant thing. And so consequently, I'm in favor of the current ordinance. It's working. I was skeptical of that ordinance, but at this point, I would not change that ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Mr. Provance.
I have to say I'm against drug rehab facilities for every reason Gene James has stated. And I believe the ordinance is 29 days pertaining to Airbnb and VRBO. just like Mr. Smith, I have stayed at Airbnbs. I stayed at them in Mexico City. I've stayed in one before I moved out here in San Clemente, Rome. I think Airbnb it brings value to a customer. We need to ensure, though, that the people who are staying at those properties are following the rules. No parties, no drugs. We need to protect homeowners' property values while ensuring those who rely on STLUs as their business can keep income coming in. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Provance. Candidates, you can see the updated order in your chat function. I'll also direct you to the Q&A function as well. And you can see the next question is from Ms. Lisa Edone. I apologize if I'm butchering your name, Lisa. For those of you who have never attended a city council meeting or been in any sort of presence in local politics, why are you running for election now? How can you have an understanding of the pressing issues our city is facing currently when you haven't been involved at all in the recent past? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I believe attending city council meetings is one of the most important, if not important, ways to stay connected and involved in our community. So with that being said, the first city council I attended was more than a year ago, and I've been interested in following local politics for close to 2 years now. What originally got me interested here is just being a resident and certain quality of life issues, specifically homelessness. So that's what got me interested. I'm from San Diego, so I've seen how a good city can be turned, upside down and, almost destroyed just because of a bad government, bad policies, and homelessness issues. But with that being said, everything else doesn't matter if we don't have our rights. And I think that's the most important issue, is electing a council member that's going to stand up for our rights. Because if we don't have our rights, if we can't go outside, none of the other issues matter. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Wellman.
Yeah, I like the question from Lisa, kind of fact checking everyone. I'm one of those guys. I haven't been to a lot of city council meetings here locally. Having a full-time career, traveling, family of 4, you name it, church involvement. But what you can do is you can read up on the issues. You can watch the virtual city councils. You can see the different statements from our council. So there's many ways to actually achieve getting the information you need as a citizen of San Clemente, as opposed to just attending council meetings and sitting there all night long. So they can go quite late, as we all know. I think Gene can speak to that. And I think a lot of us here, we jumped in this race, including myself, is because we've seen I grew up with the father in local politics, doing my homework in junior high and high school in the council chambers. And a lot of us now are realizing, a lot of our friends are realizing that local government affects your life. And that's been brought to the forefront during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's one of the reasons I've jumped in. I'm throwing my hat in the ring, is because I want to lead us out of this and unify our council so we can get things done.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Mr. Duncan.
Well, yeah, I've attended most city council meetings, both in person and virtual, since I've lived in San Clemente. I'm also very active with our local elementary school, Vista Del Mar, where I'm on the school site council, as we talked about, and I lead the Watchdogs program. That's where the dads go around the school to help the teachers out and provide security. Look, I worked at DHS for 16 years. I was sent all over the country to numerous duty stations, lived in all kinds of different cities and towns. But the first time in my adult life where I was able to choose where I wanted to live, it was, to be honest with you, it was my wife, and to a lesser extent but we chose San Clemente to raise our kids. And when I was stationed in San Diego, we lived in Carlsbad. We loved San Clemente. Lots of friends here, loved going to Del Mar. So this was always going to be our choice when we had that choice. But I think my experience living and working with local governments in those other cities give me a fresh perspective that San Clemente needs.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Hart.
Well, in the 22 years that I've been an activist in the community, I couldn't possibly count the number of city council meetings I've sat through. It's got to be in the hundreds. Furthermore, 14 years as chairing the Coastal Advisory Committee, I ran hundreds of public meetings, chaired those. as well as on the General Plan Advisory Committee meetings. So I'm very familiar with public meetings, and going back to the city council meetings, this question came up in some form or another, but we were asked to count the number of meetings we went to in the last 12 months. My count was that I attended at least 75% of the city council meetings that have been held, and I spoke at many of them. So I'm confident that as far as my engagement with the city, that is definitely one of my strong areas, and it will definitely not be a problem in terms of coming up to speed as to how a city council meeting works.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Lisa, for the question. I know this question I feel is pretty much tailored towards me. I'm not a politician, and the meetings I attend have only been on virtue online. And I'm running not because of being an expert. I'm a quick study. I'm doing this from wanting to present leadership. I have the time. When I first retired, I was a VP. Now I'm self-employed. I got time to read the agendas before and ask the questions before I go to a council meeting on things I don't understand. But I'm passionate about it. I want to do it for the community. To the voters out there, Aaron is not saying he's an expert on anything. But I tell you this, I'm a quick study. I wasn't an expert in jobs I did in the military, but I became an expert. But all I'm saying, if you want someone passionate, moral, not going to be compromised, I'm that person. You know, I ask you for your vote if that's what you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Mr. Smith.
Well, thank you for the question, Lisa. I have served for over 4 years as a commissioner on the Beach Parks and Recreation Commission. I, like Aaron and Jean, have served our country in the armed forces. I have also served as a leader in our church locally, and part of that responsibility has been assisting transient individuals as they approach our church for assistance in an effort to help them to become self-sufficient. And so that's been my service to the city. I want to help the city going forward. I want to lead the city going forward. One of the ideas that I have in assisting our businesses is I've been talking to a number of private equity professionals to see if we can establish an equity fund for our city, a recruitment fund for our city, to be able to invest in our current businesses, but also be able to recruit businesses to the area. That would be like Glaukos and Stance and companies of that sort. So that's been my service to the city, and that's my aim for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councilmember James.
I have to tell you that one of the most distinct honors I've had in my life is serving as a council member and staying at council till 11 o'clock at night. I'm kind of at odds with council right now. I think we should be meeting in person. We're not. So my little minor protest is I actually go to council chambers every meeting, and I Zoom from there. I got started going to council meetings as a result of the Sober Living House. That morphed into the criminal vagrant activity that I saw happening around the city, which then morphed into my concerns on public safety. And these are the things that really became the cornerstones of my run in 2018 and my run in 2019, because I was concerned about the city. And as far as Bill Hart attending 75% of the meetings, I think it's more like 85%. I'm not sure I've ever been to a council meeting that I didn't see my friend Bill Hart there.
Thank you, Councilmember James.
Thank you.
Mr. Provance.
Lisa, thank you for the question. And Aaron, I appreciate your humbleness in your answer. I'm not a politician either. I'm just a small business owner who wants to do more for his community. I've attended a few in the past, but since COVID, I've watched every council meeting on YouTube and Zoom. I've sent in several questions as well. I want to run because small business needs to have a voice. We need to be heard. Council needs a small business owner, especially one that's been affected by COVID, knows the hoops, knows the stress, and knows the challenges that businesses face today. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Minnehan.
Thank you, Mr. Miska. Thank you, Lisa. So Similar to Aaron and like Mr. Wellman, no, I have not been to any of the council meetings in person. I've spent the last 30 plus years on the road, traveling the country, working, bringing home paychecks for my family. However, as Mr. Wellman indicated, you can read up, read the minutes. You can also read what's going on in the paper. And as I started to read what's going on in the paper for the last years in the SC Times, decisions just weren't being made, or they just didn't make any common sense. Now, granted, government and common sense probably don't go in the same sentence. However, when I'm working in business, working with hospitals and providing the leadership, you got to be able to pull these things together and pull the people together. That's why I threw my name in the hat. That's why I'm running. And I look forward to the next 28 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. We'll go on to, this is probably going to be the last question, candidates, given the time and the need to give you some closing statements as well. Mr. Wellman, you'll go first. You can see the order in your chat function. In the Q&A, you will see the question from Mr. Kevin Sabilico. What is your plan to address the growing legal fees that the city spends suing the state and federal government? And would you be in favor of bringing on an in-house full-time city attorney? Mr. Wellman.
Yeah, Kevin, great question. Thank you for asking that. And I've actually talked to a lot of people about this issue. And I believe currently, correct me if I'm wrong, there's I don't want to call it an investigation, but an audit going on of the current firms that provides our legal services, their hours billed, and the different billing and charges they've charged the city of San Clemente. So that's already being addressed, I believe. Is that correct? I think that's what I just read up on actually this morning. I support that. I know, speaking with my father, who's a city manager for a few cities in California, he always says, check the legal fees, make sure they're in line, they're in order. So I don't know if something's awry or not. I think let the audit do its due diligence and find out, if we are paying an adequate amount or a correct amount for our legal fees. But as far as the growing legal fees, I think we've had growing costs because we have been engaged in all these lawsuits, different things like that. So I think dialing that back a little bit should save us, some money. And I think I'm out of time.
Thank you,
Arlen,
Mr.
is that
Wellman.
right? But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Duncan.
Yeah, to follow up with what Jeff said, yeah, there is a current audit going on of BB&K, who is the law firm that serves as our city attorney. So we need to let that play out. But the public, our residents, need to get a full accounting of how our legal fees have been used by BB&K. But the fact is, look, we're losing in court, and that comes out of our wallets. We're losing out of our wallets too on a number of issues, such as affordable housing, homelessness, and the hospital. We keep getting involved in lawsuits and taking positions that are very hard to stand on and end up costing us money. Even if we might prevail, we're spending lots and lots of money on this litigation, which we don't have. I served as an in-house counsel for a 60,000 person law enforcement agency, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So, I naturally bring that perspective, which is one that understands and is sensitive to the financial condition and the limitations of the organization you serve. So I do think we need an in-house counsel for San Clemente who's a full-time city attorney for San Clemente. Not following the law that comes along with having that city attorney will result in new dedicated funding streams we can use to solve our other problems, and not just complain about those problems in vain and spend and throw more money, good money after bad.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Hart.
I'll be very, very interested in the results of the audit, but I think the issue is structural, not bookkeeping issue. City attorney really has two major functions. One is to advise the city on legal issues, and the other is to provide litigation services. That should not be in the hands of one firm or one person. I do believe that we should separate those functions. We should look at bringing the advisory city attorney in-house, and that may actually save us some money. But as far as litigation is concerned, I believe we ought to have a pool of law firms that are available for various litigation purposes. They could have different specialties, such as HR, land use, other specialties that give us a better chance of winning. You could also negotiate fees and have those firms ready and waiting for when litigation pops up. But as far as the advisory portion of having a city attorney, frankly, I would like to bring that in-house unless someone convinces me differently.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Washington.
Yes, what I'd like to see is you're going to get a new city council in there. I know all the unrest we have. I would say let's put the bid out there for some other law firms and give them a chance at it and see how things come out. But not only that, put in some factors in there where you're going to get a review every 6 months or every year, whatever's practical. I'm not a lawyer, again, not an expert, but put some fail safes in there. What's the incentive of winning versus guiding us on what we should settle out of court in? Have some kind of impact. If it's going to be one lawyer that we're going to hire, then put some things in there that keeps the budget down and gives them incentive to win and properly guide us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Mr. Smith.
Well, in order to be good stewards for the taxpayers of this city, I'm not sure why we've never had audits in times past, or why we didn't have regular audits. And audits are a necessary tool to use to make sure that things are operating properly. My day job, I work with attorneys every day, crafting credit agreements for borrowers of our bank. And I know how to work with attorneys and how to keep the attorney meter off, if you will, and turn it on when it's absolutely necessary in order to be able to manage those expenses. If an in-house attorney is the appropriate avenue that we determine through an RFP, great. I'm all for that. I agree 100% with Bill. I think that we should break up our litigation services from our city legal counsel. And I think we need to have a better culture of not being so litigious. Thank you.
Mr. Smith. Councilmember James.
So I introduced the concept of an audit for our legal bills several months ago. We're getting started on that audit. The thing we're going to look at is what the billable hours were, what we accomplished, going to look at it from a quality of life perspective. What quality of life issues did we save by having this litigation? Look at the litigation against the TCA. BB&K has done that without charging us. They're going to get their legal fees at a later time. What we need to do is do this audit, and I'm not for an RFP at this time until we do an audit. And because one of the things I may want to do, and I've stated this in the past, is go with the concept of an in-house city attorney, a general counsel, as you will, if you were in the private sector. And if we have a labor issue, we feed it out to a labor attorney at the best cost we can find. If we have a land use issue, land use, whatever the issue is, that city attorney is like the litigation manager for the city. And maybe we even bonus that city manager on how much he comes in under budget. So I'm a big fan of the audit. I introduced the audit. Thank you.
Mr. Provance.
Thank you again for the question. My answer is it's hard to avoid litigation without a cohesive government. We need a unified council, a competent city manager. Without this, we get what we currently have. Some issues will require litigation, such as the TCA. Other issues we can avoid litigation. I also agree with other candidates that we should also explore replacing our current city attorney with an in-house attorney that has the best interests of San Clemente and our people.
Thank you. Mr. Minnehan.
Thank you, Kevin. And as a citizen and a resident of San Clemente, all I have to say about this audit is shame on our city leadership. Why did we have to come to the point where we have to do an audit? Who's watching the hen house here? The city leadership, the city council, the city manager should be overseen and hold these folks accountable. So what's going on? Why? It's astounding. Now, granted, I do know that the TCA was kind of high, but what about some other ones? Pick and choose the battles. That's where we need to go. If it's supportive of bringing an in-house counsel, okay, so be it. Let's bring them in. However, we do need experts. In the healthcare industry, I've outsourced organizations to bring in the quality and the folks, the talent to actually get the job done. And again, I'm for outsourcing in the areas that we need to. But again, like I said, as a citizen, shame on our leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Minnehan. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. In regards to the specific question about the legal fees, specifically against the state and the federal government, my platform is keeping big government out of San Clemente. So I think when it comes to quality of life issues or dealing with big government, we do need to defend our freedom and our rights. With that being said, clearly a change needs to happen. With regards to our council, I'm proposing an in-house council that would be part of the city, and they'll be more proactive at identifying legal issues and assessing risks. So in-house counsel is what I'm going for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'll cue the candidates to check the order for closing statements. We're nearing the end of our session this evening and wanted to give the candidates one last chance to share their views with the audience. Candidates, please take 1 minute to give the audience your closing comments. Mr. Duncan.
All right, just want to make sure I'm not muted. All right, well, I want to thank you again. Thanks again to the chamber, to all the other candidates for participating in this forum and for running for office. And thanks to the residents out there for your questions and involvement in this forum. I spent a good portion of my career at DHS prosecuting criminals and those who wanted to harm us. Now I want to prosecute the case for San Clemente. And that starts with investigating and ultimately eliminating the TCA, so we never have to worry about another toll road being imposed on our town again. I challenge the other candidates to likewise pledge they will work not just to stop the toll road, but to eliminate the TCA. Now, I'm running for city council to make our city safer, more affordable, and beautiful for my kids to grow up in. And that's why I've been endorsed by our firefighters, our Congressman Mike Levin, and current city council members all over South Orange County. So please go to my website, votechrisduncan.com, and then go to iwillvote.com. Make a plan to vote in this election and vote now. Thank you, and see you out on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Hart.
I'm the only four-year candidate who has dedicated more than 20 years to making San Clemente a better place to live. I was one of the leaders of Derail the Trail back in the late 90s. Then we formed Derail the Rail to protect our beach from double tracking. I was appointed to the Beach Ad Hoc Committee for a year, 14 years on Coastal Advisory Committee, 2.5 years on the General Plan Advisory Committee, and then a year on the Public Safety Task Force. I'm a graduate of the OCSD Citizens Academy. I also graduated from San Clemente Leadership Training and Ethics Training. What does all this mean? It means that I know how to get things done. And San Clemente has many challenges ahead, and experience counts. So I'm pro-business, pro-law enforcement, anti-toll road, and pro-San Clemente. I'm Bill Hart, and I'm asking for your vote for the 4-year slot in City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Washington.
Thank you, everybody, for having me here. As I was summarized, I'm not a politician, I'm not an expert, but I'm a quick study. I want to bring a fresh perspective. I want to be part of a decisive city council, one that's working together. We don't have to always agree, but we can disagree respectfully, be transparent and available to the citizens, and promote the small business, public safety, and get our hands around this wasteful spending and the homeless situation. Dynamic, takes up a lot of my time learning, because as you know, I was never on the council, but I am invested. Thank you, and I look forward to your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Smith.
Well, once again, thanks to the Chamber, First Amendment Voice, and thank you for letting us be here and have this time. I and when I was in the military, we saluted officers in a different fashion than the rest of the units in the service. We saluted. We said, "Rangers lead the way." And what that means is that Rangers lead the way is a phrase that was coined on Omaha Beach during D-Day. When a particular unit was pinned down on the beach at Omaha Beach, there was a general that was on the beach, and the Rangers came up behind this particular unit. And the general said to one of the Rangers, who said, quote, what unit is this? And he said, well, sir, we're Rangers. And he said, well, Rangers, lead the way, get us off this beach. And I want to lead San Clemente forward. I have good ideas around promoting our businesses and being able to create a better business environment for our city and be able to take our city to the next level. And so I ask for your vote, and please go to charliesmith2020.com to be able to see our platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councilmember James.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Gene James. You know what I've done the past year. You know where I stand, and I will continue to move in that fashion. I thank the First Amendment Voice and the Chamber and all the members of the audience this evening. I have voted to keep a homeless shelter out of town. I have fought the toll road. I will continue to fight the toll road. I have encouraged litigation against the toll road in regards to they're in breach of contract with the city of San Clemente. I have encouraged us to stop paying developmental impact fees. I have had the city council approve a letter to the district attorney recommending criminal charges against a director on the TCA. And I will continue to be that taxpayer watchdog and to be that sheepdog for the city and to take care of this city, the city that we all love very much. We all live in the greatest country in the history of mankind, and we live in the greatest city in that greatest country. And I know we all want to do the right thing for the city. I've been doing it. Please trust me. I'm Gene James. Vote for me on election day, and I will be that sheepdog for the city of San Clemente. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Mr. Provance.
First, I would like to say thank you to the Chamber for taking the time to let us talk about some issues pertaining to our city. And also thank you to those who sent in questions. And thank you to the candidates for wanting to better our city. The people are lucky to have this many choices. November 3rd is less than a month away. We have a chance with 1 seat on the 2-year and 2 seats on the 3-year to start over, reboot, and bring change to our city. We can have 3 new council members who I believe will work together, work with the people, work with OCSD, work with small businesses, and bring change that we need in this city. On November 3rd, if you vote for Jeff Provance Jr., your vote won't go to waste. I will work hard for everyone in San Clemente. I just want to say thank you again to everyone and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Minnehan.
Thank you, Mr. Miska. Thank you, Mr. Wynne. Thank you for everybody out there in the audience that participated. Some great questions. Look forward to getting whatever's left over. So when I was asked to run, or I wasn't asked to run, when I actually dipped my toe in the water here and threw my hat in the ring, I kept reading what was going on in the SC Times about the lack of communication, lack of coordination, indecision at the council level. Talked to some of my neighbors, talked to some of the businesses, and they said, wow, what the heck is really going on with city council? So I put my hat in the ring to help bring some leadership, help build a team, reach across the aisle, and let's get some things done. I'm not going to make any promises that, we're going to kill the toll. I'm not going to make all these promises, but I will give a commitment to the 67,000 residents plus the business owners that don't live in the city that I will work for them to bring some common sense back to the table and move us forward. Thank you very much. My name is Patrick Minnehan, and cheers, San Clemente.
Thank you, Mr. Minnehan. Mr. Johnson.
All right, thank you, Mr. Steve and Mr. Jeff as well. Mr. Jim, as well as the whole Chamber of Commerce, and as well as everyone who tuned in tonight. And I'm very honored to share this platform with such a great group of individuals who want to better the city for their families and for many generations to come. And I'm thankful that we could all agree on protecting and enhancing the quality of life that we all enjoy here in San Clemente, and we all pretty much agree on how the city can better serve our residents and our businesses. But none of this matters if we can't go out to swim in the middle of the ocean, if our grandparents can't take our grandkids out to dinner, or if we can't go to church. The protection of our natural rights is the most important the most important virtue. And we need a city council member that's going to stand up for our rights and not respond to California politics or federal politics, but that's going to respond and represent the people of San Clemente. And that's me. I'm your candidate for that. I invite you to visit my website, which is Thor Johnson, the letter 4sc.com. And I'm Thor Johnson. I'd love your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Wellman.
Yeah, thank you being the last guy speaking tonight. Thank you, residents of San Clemente, for your time, for paying attention. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for putting this event on. Again, I'm Jeff Wellman. My whole platform is, why do we elect local government leaders with their own agendas into positions that are self-serving for their agendas? Please elect me. I'll represent the people, right? Government should reflect the people that elected them into their position. I think that's where we've gotten it wrong, especially in California. Government should do what the people want and not vice versa. I'm all for people over politics. I care about this town. It took my wife and I a long time to save up to move here. And I'm going to use the phrase, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Yeah, I'm a transplant here. I've lived here 6 years. I don't want San Clemente to change. Everyone moved here because we love this town as is. And I want to protect the vibe that we have here in this beautiful local community by the sea. Vote for me, Jeff Wellman. I would love to serve as your voice on the city's council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Candidates, we are grateful for your willingness to step forward and represent the citizens of San Clemente. Thank you for having the courage to serve. A heartfelt thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this event with First Amendment Voice. They make a wonderful partner for business and nonprofits like us in San Clemente. If you would like to learn more about the benefits of Chamber membership, visit their website or give them a call. Big thanks to Jim Wynne, my fellow moderator, Susie Lance, and Arlen Flores at the Chamber for all their support, Alex Wells for technical support tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you most of all for joining us this evening. There were over 200 of you who registered, over 100 online live. I'm sure a lot more will watch the video when it's produced. We will provide all of the unanswered questions to your candidates so their campaigns can choose how to respond. By asking your questions and hearing how they responded to both yours and the Chamber's, you are now better informed if you have not yet voted. We applaud you, the audience, for showing an interest in who's running for your city council. If you know friends or family who were not able to watch this tonight, please feel free to check out the First Amendment Voice YouTube channel in the next 48 hours. We will post this video up there, published, so that you can check it out. At First Amendment Voice, we believe that citizenship is not a spectator sport. Thank you for getting involved and taking an interest in our Spanish village by the sea. Good night.